Well, Disney definitely specializes in making movies for kids. They know who is taking those kids to see their movies. Parents. And if parents are going to be willing to sit through a ton of animated kids movies, Disney knows that it has to include a few little things just for them. So, just like in most of their movies, there are a few things in Frozen 2 that children might not have noticed, but their parents and older siblings sure did. Before we launch into it, we have to warn you that in order to talk about all the things that only grown-ups noticed in Frozen 2, we're going to reveal some details about the movie. So if you haven't made it out to the theater yet, maybe put this video on pause until you do. With that out of the way, let's get going. Disney is really good at making sure their movies always have a few good jokes for all the parents and the guardians out there who might otherwise find the whole lighthearted affair a little dull. While there isn't anything outwardly explicit in Frozen 2, there is one little bit almost at the end that made us chuckle, not because of the words themselves, but the innuendo behind them. During Anna's coronation to become Queen of Arendelle, she has a quick exchange with Kristoff that has a lot more meaning behind it than it seems. While we love Kristoff for his outdoorsy charm, it's pretty clear that he is a little bit more comfortable chopping wood and wrangling reindeer than he is dancing in the palace in a coat and tails. But that doesn't mean he can't try. For the big celebration, he and Olaf get themselves all cleaned up with slicked back hair and snow. While Anna is happy with the look, she doesn't want Kristoff to change too much, so she ruffles his hair a little and says, "I prefer you in leather anyways." Here's where things get a little grown up. While it seems like she is just saying that she likes him the way he is, there is no way that this innuendo wasn't intentional. And what does it mean exactly? Well, thanks to some specific guidelines we have to follow, we can't get into all the nitty-gritty. Suffice to say, there are certain adults who, make use of leather in their off time, if you catch our drift. Anna is a queen after all, and this seems to indicate that she takes that position pretty seriously. Kristoff, being the gentle, agreeable guy, seems more happy to oblige. Hey, whatever builds your snowman. The creators of Frozen just couldn't help but slide a little bit more innuendo into their movie, because you can't really ever have too much. While the gang are on their way to the Enchanted Forest, Anna and Kristoff have a rare moment to themselves. The two, who are young and in love, look at each other and sparks fly. At least for Anna. She asks Kristoff, "So, what do you want to do?" and leans in for a kiss. Kristoff doesn't take the hint, and Anna's request is denied. Not all of the jokes and references in Frozen 2 are of that nature, however. Some are, instead, about nostalgia, or about reminding the parents in the audience of things that their children have no way of remembering. It's safe to say that Disney is obsessed with nostalgia, a fact which is made clear by their intention to remake every single movie in their canon. They love to look back at days gone by, and they are also totally aware of the fact that the children who first grew up loving their movies are now having little ones of their own, and taking them to see their childhood favorites remade. And it would be difficult to look back at the Disney of before without mentioning the music. Earlier Disney is a time when 80s and 90s soft rock reigned supreme, and those songs are imprinted into our memories to this day. We're talking about the likes of Phil Collins and his iconic Tarzan soundtrack, and Michael Bolton's life-changing I Can Go the Distance for Hercules. We're not allowed to play any of that music here, but please do yourself a favor and check out the official music video for that song from the Hercules original soundtrack. You won't regret it, or you will, but in a good way. It's with this type of nostalgia in mind that the creators of Frozen 2 gave Jonathan Groff a song for Kristoff called Lost in the Woods. It is a full-on power ballad that sounds like the love child of Bolton and Collins with a little Celine Dion thrown in for good measure. You could almost picture a group of celebrities singing it all together in order to raise awareness for deforestation, like We Are the World. It transports anyone who has seen the first generation of Disney classics right back into the 8th grade school dance. And there is no way the composers didn't do that on purpose. Oh, Olaf. Parents and kids alike can't get enough of the adorable snowman voiced by the pitch-perfect Josh Gad. There is one moment of his that made all of those over the age of 18 chuckle like a wise old owl. Olaf has a song called When I Am Older, and basically it's all about how he will understand everything when he is, older. It's a very impressive song, because not only does it assure kids that they will comprehend the world a lot more when they grow up, but it also serves as a joke to every adult who knows, now that they are older, that could not be further from the truth. Olaf sings about how the things that he fears today will be something to look back on and laugh once years have passed, which is true in a way, but also chances are he'll wind up in a very expensive therapy session, spending years trying to unpack just how those fears have contributed to his personality as an adult. The song ends with a lyric about how, when you're older, everything makes sense. Sure, Olaf. Personally, we can't wait until you're older, so you can tell us how to calculate our deductibles and explain exactly why all of the music in restaurants is so loud now. Also, if someone texts you a single lowercase k when they usually spell out the whole word, okay, does that mean that they hate you? Give us the answer, Olaf. It's a well-known fact by now that almost all Disney movies are based off of much older stories. The Lion King is a loose take on Shakespeare's Hamlet, and Tangled, Cinderella, Snow White, and more are retellings of old Grimm's fairy tales. Frozen itself is based off of a 19th century Danish folktale called The Snow Queen by none other than Hans Christian Andersen. If you know the name, it's because Andersen is pretty much the only author of dark Danish folktales that you ever learned about in school. Usually the movies don't reference the original material that they are based off of, but that's where Frozen 2 threw in one little line just for the adults in the audience. When Elsa is under the sea in a giant ice dome, she sees her past projected across the walls around her, including one of her parents when they were young. In it, we see her father Agnar reading under a tree. When her mother asks what the book is, he replies that it's just some new Danish author. Of course he is talking about Hans Christian Andersen, and it's pretty meta to reference the man who wrote the story that the characters are currently in. It's not the first time that Disney has borrowed from Hans's library either. The Little Mermaid is another one of his most famous adaptations, though as usual the whole thing is way darker in the original. You know what? We'll say it. We stan Olaf. Is that what the kids are saying these days? Back in our day, the only stan we knew featured a chorus by Dido and an angsty Devon Sawa in the most aggressively early 2000s music video of all time. Anyway, Olaf, as is often the case, the one who appears the silliest is actually really wise in their own way. Olaf makes points throughout the movie that might pass right over the heads of some of the younger viewers, mostly about how aware he is of the fact that he is transforming and growing. He points out as soon as he and the rest of the group enter the forest that it is a place of transformation, and his self-awareness is pretty amazing. Throughout the history of storytelling, enchanted forests have been places where characters enter one way and emerge having changed. While all the other characters are focused on the tasks at hand, Olaf's more whimsical nature actually allows him to comment on the overall theme of the movie and how the forest relates to that. The whole character is about change, which can be terrifying and sad, but a character like Olaf, with his straightforward way of examining things from the outside, lets us know that it's all part of life. Most kids hate going to bed, we know that, but once they're asleep, they generally stay that way. But once you get a little older, things tend to change. Unless you're one of the lucky ones who can fall asleep with just a cup of chamomile and nothing on your mind, you know a little something about insomnia, or at least what can feel like insomnia. In the movie, Elsa can't fall asleep because of a mystical voice that calls her in the night. While for kids that might seem like a special occurrence, most adults know what it feels like to be called out of bed by a little voice. Mom! 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 Except instead of embarking on a magical journey, our little voice is usually just reminding us of all the things we forgot to do, wondering if we left the oven on, or, reminding us about the $20,000 student loan that we have. While Frozen 2 might be a lighthearted movie for children, the overall message actually goes a lot deeper than that. The movie is great at telling the story in a way that kids can understand, but it will definitely be up to their parents and guardians to explain in more detail what it means in the real world. Midway through the movie, we find out more about Arendelle's history and its neighbors, the nomadic Northundra. It turns out that the girl's grandfather had built a dam for the Northundra, which he claimed was a peace offering, but in reality, he used the dam to weaken their land in order to make them more vulnerable before taking out their leader while he was unarmed. It was based off of what happened to the indigenous people of Lapland in Norway, who are also known as the Sami, and what was done to them by the Norwegian and Finnish government. This is a story that is all too familiar all over the world, and seeing as how Frozen is created by an American company filled with American actors, there is a huge parallel to be drawn to the colonization of North America by Christopher Columbus. Throughout the movie, Olaf continues mentioning the idea that water has memory. If you think about it, Olaf's blood is water, and well, so is Elsa's for that matter. While it might just sound like a pretty poetic thing to say, Olaf is getting at a quite complicated scientific theory that blood and genes have memory. that can be passed down from generation to generation. So what flows through Olaf and Elsa, and everyone else for that matter, because human beings are up to 60% water, has held on to the memories of what happened between Arendelle and Northumbria. Finally, it all comes down to a game of charades. Chances are, as you get older, charades become less and less of a fun game, and more of a competitive nightmare that ends in broken friendships and silent car rides home. Well, the same might be said for how it goes in Frozen, after Olaf shapeshifts into a bunch of different things, and finally into Elsa, which winds up being pretty sexy for a snowman. Kristoff immediately guesses correctly, which leads to an understandable grumpy reaction from Anna. And that's it for all the jokes and moments in Frozen 2 that were just for the grown-ups. What do you think of these moments? Was there anything else from the movie that we missed? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button to keep up with all of our latest videos.